If you were in the Dota map, what would it feel like? Is it hot, humid, windy? And how would it change when going onto the dire side? Is it cold, dry, hard to breathe? We all know how Dota makes us feel, but how does it literally feel? Now, figuring this out is not very straightforward. Some might even say it's impossible, but I have an idea. If we look around the map at most things people never even notice, we should be able to find some clues. For example, this tortoise, or these butterflies, or these cattails in the river.
I found some wild glizzies.
If we can figure out what kind of climate these things live in, we can probably find our answer. Now stick with me, because the first thing we should talk about is kind of puzzling. First, we'll go over the radiant side of the map, which is warmer and full of life. Then we'll check out the dire side, which is a burnt wasteland. Look at this pine tree, and this oak tree, now this bamboo tree. What do they all have in common? They're all in Dota 2. Kinda. Pine trees, which usually grow in cooler climates and higher elevations. Oaks, which are common in mild temperate zones with well-defined seasons. And somehow, bamboo, which grows in warmer subtropical regions. It's a strange mix, but it's not impossible. You'll find it in places like southern Japan, parts of China's mountain ranges, or on the foothills of the Himalayas. Regions where elevation and climate zones overlap just enough for all three to exist in the same forest. This tells us that this is not just a normal, flat, boring forest. It's ecologically stacked. These real-life places usually sit around 70 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit with lush vegetation and plenty of rainfall. Nice, that's a pretty solid starting point. But it's not just about the trees, it's about what's living around them. And there's actually a lot. You got birds chirping throughout the day. Red ones looks like maybe a cardinal, and blue ones, maybe a simplified blue jay or a mountain bluebird. Simple, but important. Most birds only get chatty in stable, mild climates. If it were too cold or dry, you wouldn't hear much. There's also a rooster that crows at dawn, which implies there's maybe a farm just off screen. There are butterflies all over the radiant side, which tells us that the air is warm, still, and sunny. Butterflies literally can't fly well if it's too cold. They're like flying thermometers. And if you spot one of these goofy looking squirrels scampering around, that's another clue. Squirrels like seasonal forests with predictable food sources. Your classic temperate biome checklist. And in the river, fireflies. Kinda looks like a blue dasher. These thrive near warm ponds and lakes. Frogs, maybe an American bullfrog? That's a big clue too. Frogs need moisture, clean water, and moderate warmth. So yeah, that 70 to 80 degree theory, still looking pretty good. But then, something weird happens. Down the river. A tortoise. That's a problem, guys. That is a problem. This looks like a desert tortoise. And while he's a cute little guy, he kinda messes up our theory. You see, these normally live in places like the Mojave Desert, something around 90 to 110 degrees Fahrenheit, places with low vegetation. And that's not what we've been talking about. If Radiant is just a mild forest, what is this heat-loving tortoise doing here? So now we've got to think. Most of the animals say late summer forest, but this tortoise is saying something warmer, maybe subtropical. Maybe the answer isn't just what lives here, maybe it's what this place is actually made of. So what about the land itself? Radiant doesn't sit on flat ground. You got cliffs, ramps, and a waterfall spilling from the edge of the map. That actually tells us a lot. In real geography, waterfalls don't just appear anywhere. They need elevation, a steep drop in terrain. Which means this side of the map is probably sitting on a highland zone, maybe even the edge of a ridge or mountain range. And that changes the picture. This isn't just a peaceful forest, it's a mountain forest, probably getting pretty cool at night with misty mornings and tree canopies that never fully dry. And everything checks out. A mountain forest like this could easily support pine, oak, and even bamboo, especially in a place that stays mild year-round. And while Radiant does feel calm, it's not completely still either. There is wind, but it's soft. Just enough to move the banners or rustle the treetops. Nothing harsh, nothing sudden. The kind of air that lets everything settle. And maybe that's the key word here. Settled.
Hey guys, it's Settled, and welcome to the very first episode of the Ultimate Iron Man series.
Because Radiant is full of ruins, broken statues, cracked stones, moss-covered walkways, but they're not shattered, not burned, not smashed apart by battle. They're resting, slowly overtaken by dirt and time. That kind of slow takeover doesn't happen in places with extreme weather, which means this region probably hasn't seen a harsh winter, a flood, or a wildfire in a very long time. Everything here has been left to grow. Slight wardrobe change, maybe I'm recording this on a different day, who knows? And when you zoom out and take it all in, Radiant starts to feel less like a battlefield and more like a place that was meant to thrive. So here's where we're at. Everything on the Radiant side points to a peaceful, stable, mostly natural environment. The things here suggest it feels like a late summer in a highland forest. Around low to mid 70s with a slight breeze. Clean water, dense vegetation, and tons of wildlife. Realistically, you'd be fine in a t-shirt during the day and a hoodie by night. Overall, this feels like a place that you could actually live in. But wait, there was this tortoise, which hints at something warmer, something darker, something more dire. The trees are twisted and hollow, most are bare, leafless, withered. There's some brush, small patches of plants, even mushrooms tucked in the shadows, but nothing here looks healthy. Nothing looks welcome. The ground, cracked, dry, dead. And while Radiant had waterfalls and high cliffs, Dire feels like it's sinking. But despite its depressing appearance, there are still a ton of clues for what it actually feels like to be here. There are swarms of bats flying around, maybe black fruit bats. Those live in hotter, humid areas, high 70s to even above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, what about this rhinoceros beetle? These love hot, humid, tropical, and subtropical forests. Spider, maybe a wolf spider? They're good just about anywhere. They're actually pretty adaptable. So far, the creatures here suggest a much warmer, probably even pretty humid environment. Look around and you'll see cracks in the ground and lava bleeding through. It's probably pretty hot here, so that fits. And maybe the tortoise that we saw earlier is actually supposed to be here, but he just decided to wander around a bit. So if it is hot here, there are a couple of things that actually don't make much sense. First, these moths. It's hard to say what kind they look like, but maybe a rosy maple moth or a Luna moth if they were more red. The issue with these is that they prefer warm but not really hot areas. Maybe 60 to like max 80 degrees Fahrenheit. If Dire is on the lower end of being hot, these might work, but this next thing I'm not so sure about. These mushrooms, maybe Mycena rosea? Fungi are pretty sensitive to heat. And this kind specifically prefers cool, damp environments, maybe around 50 to mid 70s. Again, this Dire side is probably pretty hot and dry, so it's the exact opposite of what they would want. Okay, that is pretty troubling for our theory so far. If Dire is as hot as we were thinking, it might have to be on the much lower end of that range. And even that might be too hot for this to make any sense. So what's going on here? Well, this is something that I've been trying to avoid, but maybe I just can't anymore. The lore. In the lore, Dire is tied to something called the Dire Stone, a corrupting artifact, powerful enough to warp nature around it. It doesn't burn everything the way fire does. It twists it, corrupts it. And if that's true, if this stone is buried into the Dire side, then maybe the map isn't showing us two opposite environments. Maybe it's showing us the same place, but one of them lost the fight. So maybe the Dire side is in the early stages of being transformed and taken over. And these mushrooms we see don't have very much longer to live. So what does all of this mean for the climate on the Dire side? Well, if Radiant feels like a stable highland forest somewhere around 70 degrees Fahrenheit, Dire isn't just hotter, it's unstable. It's been warped. The signs point to heat, lava, dry soil, tropical bugs, but that heat doesn't follow the rules. You got signs of cool, damp-loving fungi right next to cracked, sun-scorched ground. It's as if whatever climate Dire used to have got overridden, corrupted into something unnatural. So after everything we've learned here, this is what it seems like. Dire feels like it's hovering around 85 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, but not tropical, not humid like Radiant, it's dry and hostile. Like a place that's pretending to support life but doesn't actually want to. And maybe the mushrooms that we see are on their final day before the climate kills them off. So what does all of this mean for the climate, for what it actually feels like to be here? This isn't just a battlefield, it's a world full of rivers that flow from high cliffs, forests with an unusual mix of trees, very strange looking squirrels. Even in a game all about war, destruction, chaos, someone at some point cared enough to fill it with life. Little details that most players will never even notice. Radiant feels like a late summer forest, somewhere around 70 degrees Fahrenheit with clean air, flowing water, and tons of wildlife. It might drop down to maybe mid 60s at night, but it's still comfortable and refreshing. Dire feels like the opposite, but not because it's cold. It's hot, dry, and damaged. Cracked ground, lava, bats and beetles instead of birds and frogs. Maybe around 90 degrees Fahrenheit during the day. At night, it might drop a bit, maybe around mid 80s. But much of the heat seems to be coming from underground, which would continue even after the sun sets. And yet, both sides feel real. And the more you stop to notice these things around the map, the more alive it starts to become. So the next time you get caught out at the start of a team fight and die, take that moment to look at the world around you and appreciate it.
Sorry guys, I'm tilted. They're ganking top! Can you come once on Trinket? You bought Orb of Venom with a razor, just hit him! What's so hard? One time, gank!
Dota is an incredibly popular game, but Valve doesn't advertise it at all. If you want to know how Gaben and Valve managed to pull that off, check out this other video of mine. Thank you to all the members on Patreon and YouTube. It means a lot and it helps me focus more time on creating content. Be sure to join our community Discord so you can chat with people about Dota or non-Dota related stuff and even find people to party with. Links to everything will be in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I hope you learned something new with me. Bye.